And the world is here. The world is with you. Thank you.
All right, you're back again if you're just joining us now. We are joined by my favorite two professors on the planet, Professor Mark Merowitz from New York in the USA and Professor Hakkı Hoca here in Istanbul. And we're going to talk, if it kills me, we're going to talk about this Russia-Ukraine incident, and I really want to get their insights on this. All right, guys, thanks for being so patient. Technology these days seems to affect us all. It doesn't matter which country you're in. All right, let's, just in case people have been just joining us now, let's recap. My first question was you to Hakkı. I'm going to summarize for people. I asked you, Hakkı Hoca, how's the war going? I know it's quite a wide net of a question, and you said, look, war should stop. Okay, we know that. And people are dying. Yes, we know that. Professor Mark said, well, the war's going, in a way that Russia are losing. Now, this is interesting. When we look at a map, Professor Hakkı Hoca, when we look at a map, we can clearly see that Russia is gaining territory day by day. And yet, Professor Mark Merowitz says Russia is losing. Perhaps morally, with morale, with the human morale, it's losing. But when you're looking at territorial-wise, what do you think, Hakkı Hoca? It's about to take Odessa.
Right now, if you look at the record of Vladimir Putin, you would see that he is a very ferocious person. He would fight with all the death tools he has in his hands and everything. He would do that. He wouldn't even allow an opponent go alive or talk against him or anything. So he would use force if he wants to. He's not using it right now. He is acting very cautiously, not ferocious, but very cautiously. The reason for that is the possibility and even probability of his being cut off from the world financial system. That's very important. I don't, he doesn't care, and I don't mean that we're talking about the logistics, selling and buying things. We are talking about movement of money. This is more important than moving of goods in today's world. And the United States and the European Union successfully stopped this system working right now. I mean, you cannot send one single penny to Russia, to anybody, commercial, political, or anything. And they cannot transfer money to here. Yes, it is true, yet they are selling gas and oil and everything to Europe, but they cannot be paid back. As one point they said, a European leader was talking about, at this day and age, you can move money on the back of mules or horses. You can't do that. He said he's right. I mean, it is impossible to move money around like that. You have to have some way of from bank to bank system working, but it is not. This is important. This is why he is acting very cautiously. He doesn't want that Ukraine or the government, the existing government right now, to go with the NATO application.
Okay.
The moment they say, okay, we are stopping, we don't want to be a member of NATO or anything, he will stop. And he doesn't want to ruin Ukraine because the Russian people always considered Ukraine as a friend nation, as a brother nation. So they don't want to ruin everything there. I mean, even that much ruin is too much for any ordinary Russian person. It is not the way to make it work right now, I think, is not what Zelensky asked for. It is not to provide air support, aircraft to them. It is to Ukraine. The way to stop this war is diplomacy. You should be talking, but not the way Blinken is talking. He is simply agitating Ukrainian people. You should go and talk as Prime Minister Bennett did yesterday go to Russia, go to Moscow, and sit down and talk to the guy. That's what President Erdogan is doing today. He's not going to Russia, but he is on the phone. I know that he is very much ready to go there to both capital cities and speak to the presidents. That is the way we need right now. We have to stop agitating them.
All right, let's take it slowly. Mark, you talk about these gas sanctions. That's not happening. Oh, they're not putting the sanctions on there. But so is Russia able to continue selling this gas and energy to the West, even though it's not going to get paid? That sounds a bit weird.
No, but I think that was the point I was making, that the SWIFT is left open to the extent that these payments can be made. But I did want to react to the points that that Professor Rojal made. First of all, and to your question, Russia has lost because it wasn't able to defeat Ukraine immediately. Its command and control, many of the military experts are looking at this and thinking that they've been very unsuccessful. The Ukrainians have actually killed a major general, one of General Sukhovitsky. Their command and control, they have lost planes, troops. In fact, the Ukrainians captured Russian soldiers and wrote or made a broadcast that tell their mothers to come from Russia and bring them home. They have had an incredible defense. And now what is occurring is that I think it's Poland is going to, or somehow through the United States, provide Soviet-era MiGs to the Ukrainian Air Force, that those pilots can fly. So in other words, and you remember that 40-kilometer long troops and tanks that stuck on the road. So Russia has not acquitted itself very, very well militarily. What's really happening about diplomacy, I would really analogize it to kind of the Roman Empire, where we used to say Nero fiddles while Rome burns. Well, Putin's fiddling while Ukraine is burning, but also Russia is losing troops. I mean, maybe Putin doesn't care about it, but I think the Russian people, if they knew about it, a lot of the Russians don't know about it. A lot of the Russians, as I've been hearing, think this is some sort of they're going to save their brothers. I mean, is this the way you treat your brother? By annihilating, killing little children, babies, attacking maternity wards? And how about the attack on the nuclear reactor? I mean, that is borderline insanity. Would create a nuclear disaster beyond the level of Chernobyl. I mean, what is going on here is a big moment for the world to step back and say, how can this be allowed to proceed? Now, I know a lot of mistakes have been made in the past in stopping Putin in Crimea, in Georgia, and the Donbass, but at this point, going to annihilate Ukraine, and even if he won somehow, he'd have to occupy Ukraine. And how would he be able to do that? And would the Russian people allow it? Well, you see, 2,000 Russians were detained, I just looked, who were protesting on the streets. The numbers are getting higher and higher. As the ruble is now less than worth a cent, the stock market can't open, there's no foreign exchange. I mean, how much longer is he going to do this, or he's just going to keep fiddling till Moscow burns?
Okay, all right, okay, here's a question for you. Now, they've opened this humanitarian, or they're going to be opening this humanitarian corridor. According to Putin, everything's going to plan. What do you think that if this humanitarian corridors are open, they let the people out, and then Putin comes and levels Kiev? Is that a possibility?
Yes, it's a possibility. I mean, he is very much prepared to do that. There's this Turkish proverb: "You are either mine, or you either belong to me, or you belong to the ground." That is the man's mentality. I mean, there's not one single serious opponent he has that is breathing right now. They stopped breathing a long time ago. Putin can do it. And Putin lost his mind when he said that there's no nation as Ukrainians, almost 2 months ago. Now, we should know that we are dealing with a man who is thinking that right now the whole world is against him and they are attacking him. And as soon as they have NATO in Ukraine and Georgia, they are going to dismember Russian Federation as they did Soviet Union. That is his mentality. When you have somebody like that, you have to be very careful. You have to be very diplomatic. You have to approach him very, very carefully. You shouldn't be making him more angrier than you need to. Unfortunately, again, we think in the West, Turkey is also part of it. We think that he is going to invade all Ukraine. That's not the case. That's not what he wants to. He simply wants to change the leadership in Ukraine. That's what he wants. I mean, day one, he said there should be a military coup or somebody so we can talk to people. He doesn't think that Zelensky is a reputable leader to be talked to. Also, he considers half of the opposition in the country, the nationalist and ultra-nationalist worthy opponents to speak to. He calls them Nazis, and he has in his mind this denazification program for them. Therefore, right now, we are in very difficult position as the world. Okay. We have to find a way to stop this war. We have to get, I don't know how we can do it, but we should stop the shedding blood right now, and we need immediate ceasefire.
Okay. So you're saying basically that we should switch to diplomacy, go like Prime Minister Bennett went over to Moscow, had a chat, hopefully calm down. But Mark, let me ask you, do you think Putin is a man who accepts or receives these diplomacy, or is he a man that you need to act, put force, show strength? Does he respond to strength, or does he respond to a quiet chat in the corner of of Moscow?
It's hard to know what he's doing because it's completely delusional. I mean, it's completely ridiculous, this idea that Ukraine is part of Russia, and he gave this history lesson. He's been writing about this for years. He's been talking about this for years. And here's the problem. Nobody was paying attention to what he was saying all these years. So he took part of Georgia, he took Crimea, he went into the Donbass, and nobody did anything. And this is the problem. Now, the diplomacy part, hey, listen, we've had there's been efforts, Macron, Biden, you name it, Blinken, trying to talk to these people and tell them to stop. The time to cease fire, you have a ceasefire negotiation while you're obliterating the people and killing civilians? This is ridiculous. The world cannot stand up for this. And on the points that we talked previously about why Putin is angry, it's besides the point why he's angry, and it is not his right to create regime change in a state which has is a territorial integrity, a member of the United Nations. If you would like to look at the United Nations Charter, it does talk about attacking territorial integrity as a violation of the Charter. And isn't it ironic, or I would say crazy, and that's why I think Zelensky being a comedian is absolutely perfect for the fact that Russia was the president of the Security Council and was the one vote vetoing the UN condemning Russia's actions. If you look at the General Assembly, however, you will see 141 nations against 5, and those 5 are nothing to be proud of. North Korea and the others are not prideful nations that believe in peace and liberty and freedom. This is an existential threat to the world and also to all of our international institutions. So it's irrelevant that Putin thinks that he wants regime change, or he doesn't like Ukraine, or he thinks there are Nazis there, which is absolutely one of the most ridiculous things in the world, since I think that Volodymyr Zelensky is Jewish. Yeah. I mean, is this delusional, ridiculous? The world is standing by, and I must say, The U.S. position, I do understand it, on not getting involved because you could have an, I think that's changing also on the no-fly zone, because as this continues, you get to a point where you destroy people in a way that is, it gets to beyond the point where even diplomacy can stop this. I mean, I agree with the idea that you must stop this, yes. But the idea of stopping it because I want another government, or I think Ukraine are my brothers and I don't like their government and I don't like the right-wing groups that exist in Ukraine. Ukraine is an independent country. They voted for Zelensky. And look at Zelensky in contradiction and contraposition to Putin. He is a hero in the world now for standing up to aggression. And the International Criminal Court is looking into this. I mean, this is beyond acceptability on the part of the world, and it needs to stop, yes, but it doesn't need to stop with diplomacy, where the diplomacy is, Putin wants the recognition of Crimea as part of Russia. These are his demands. He wants a new government that could be a puppet of his. This is not acceptable. And I would say, finally, that if he thought NATO was, or Macron thought NATO was brain dead, NATO is alive right now. And the world is coalescing against this. And I think this is, if there's any bright spot, but there's not a lot of bright spots here, the bright spot is that the world is getting together and saying, no to what is going on here. And no, you cannot just invade a country and crush its people when they don't want that. You can't do it.
Go on,
We're
Hucker.
back in World War II.
Yes.
We're back in World War II.
All right. Hucker, let's hear Hucker. Mark got a bit excited there. I know how passionate you are. Go, Hucker.
We keep hearing those no's on the news channels, news bulletins, but right after that, Europeans goes to buy Russian oil, Russian gas, and they are looking for ways to transfer money. Two banks are not in the SWIFT blockade, but why is that? Because the Western alliance is, if not brain dead, is not working. Because Europeans do have definite change of heart, change of interest in this thing. Now, Biden and his people at the State Department and defense apparatus wants to change the regime in Russia. That is what they are trying to do. Mm-hmm. And they are actually trying to dismember Russian Federation. It is not only a fake thing or hallucination of Putin and his crazy cohort around him, but that is a fact. That's what they are going to do.
So what you're saying is that actually America want, just to recap, America want to dismember or take apart Russia.
How can we explain the existence of Victoria Nuland in the government right now? I mean, this is the lady only 6 years ago was trying to arrange to glue United Nations to the U.S. Policies in that leaked telephone conversation with his ambassador in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Also, they are at this point right now reaping what they saw. Mm-hmm. They did, United States, they did change, they did obliterate people in Afghanistan, in Iraq. They did that. Just to capture a group of, a bunch of Taliban terrorists, they bombed Mazar-e-Sharif from right to left and center. And big countries, powerful nations do that. That is called political realism. We have to accept this. And that is why we need to find a diplomatic way to get into the head of this, thick head of this Putin.
Okay, let's look at that diplomatic way. Now, it's going to be a bit tough for Putin just to pull out and go, you know what, hey guys, sorry. You know, I tried, I failed. He's not going to leave easily with, you know, with his tail between his legs. What is a win-win situation here for both sides? I mean, I can't see it. What are your thoughts? Huck, you go first.
It is very easy. I mean, Zelensky is coming out. I mean, he is winning this war with his voice, with his act, with his eyebrows and everything. He should come out and say, okay, we made a mistake. We made this crazy guy even crazier. We don't want to be a member of NATO anymore. Give us this perpetual neutrality, whatever they call it, and that's okay. At that point, he will go out. I mean, Putin will go out, and the West go to the rescue of those demolished cities and everything. And
wait. But if Ukraine joins EU, are they not automatically part of NATO?
No, it is not. EU is okay. I mean, EU doesn't. EU even cannot scratch its own head.
Right.
EU is going to provide a democratic, developed environment so that it will create its own attraction. Yes, okay, let them do that, and let Ukraine and everybody else and his mother become a member of EU. That's okay, because that is not going to scare this crazy man in Moscow. And that is what we need to do right now, I think.
What do you think, Mark? Do you think that's the case? What are your thoughts? What's the win-win situation here?
Well, there's no win-win here. There's only, because it's the people who suffer. And the only way to get through this, I just want to say one thing first. On regime change, the United States does not want regime change in Russia. In fact, if you look historically, even recently, the United States wasn't focusing on Russia. It was focusing on China. And if you look at all the generals here, they're all talking about China as the existential threat. They were not focusing on Russia. And if you look at Trump, Trump was very favorable to Russia. So I don't see that. And about Afghanistan, and I want to say one thing. First of all, just because America did something somewhere does not validate what Putin is doing. But here's the thing. Who started the problem in Afghanistan? Russia. Russia invaded Afghanistan. As a result of that, the United States supported the Mujahideen to take out the Russians, and then, the rest is history. We know that. But the point being here is that I think the Europeans actually, of course, the whole thing is also Americans about gas prices and gas. I mean, Biden doesn't want to, destroy the ability of the European economies to function. I get that. It's a very, very hard situation. But when you're dealing with this question of Ukraine being part of NATO, remember, Finland was suppressed by Russia. We call this Finlandization. Remember? Invaded. Now Finland itself wants to support Ukraine, is supporting Ukraine by allowing the transshipment of materiel through Estonia. All the Europeans are coalescing against this. There's no interest in the United States for regime change. I mean, on the contrary, the whole situation with Russia, we had some issues with negotiating some treaties with them. Trump had gone out of some nuclear arms treaties and so forth. But basically, the United States didn't do anything on Crimea. They didn't do anything on Georgia. They didn't do anything on Donbass. They weren't changing anything. But when Putin crossed the line, and Biden made it very clear, if you cross the line and you do an invasion, that is not going to be acceptable. And I think the Europeans are on board with that 100%. He's created a humanitarian disaster. And we mentioned in passing the attack on a nuclear reactor in Zaporizhia. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. By the way, the United States does not want to dismember Russia. This is in the mind of Putin, this idea. Okay. This goes back to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union and Russia was always afraid of invasion. Napoleon invaded, Hitler invaded. Nobody is attacking Russia. Ukraine didn't attack Russia. NATO didn't attack Russia. Nobody attacked Russia. This is a complete nonsensical. It is unacceptable. The attacker is Russia. And if anybody can't figure that out, then read a book like 1984, read some books that where the truth is inverted. And the people in Russia don't even know the truth of what's really going on. They think, and the soldiers we know, and the Russians have come in, they thought the Ukrainians would welcome them. They thought they were coming to help them. So at the end of the day, is there a win-win? Well, I think the solution is very simple. You need Putin to stop this and to pull out his troops right now. There's no further diplomacy with someone who is murdering and killing people. That just doesn't go. What would be the point of it? Why? And in fact, I think they shouldn't even negotiate with Putin unless they stop attacking. And that, I've never heard that. Usually there's a ceasefire and you have a negotiation. Here, there's an endless barrage on civilians. The world has to stand up and say, it can't be acceptable. You can't do this. There has got to be a line which you can't cross. And I commend President Erdogan, as you mentioned, Prime Minister Bennett, for trying hard to work out something of a withdrawal or a solution where Putin can pull back in a way where he doesn't, I don't know, get upset about it. I don't. At this point, the world is beyond that. Why should the world be so concerned about someone's feelings who is an aggressor? I mean,
but at the end of the day, Mark, it doesn't matter how passionate we talk about this, at the end of the day, Putin is not going to leave without having something, without saying, I got at least something out of this. Now, Hucker, I remember you and I, we spoke about it a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago. We talked about this no-fly zone. Well, we talked about NATO involving the no-fly zone in Bosnia and Libya. I think it was you that actually told me about it, Professor Hucker. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that they should perhaps invoke this no-fly zone over Ukraine? Is that possible?
When you declare a no-fly zone, you have to, if you really want to keep your credibility and everything for declaring no-fly zone, you have to enforce it. In order to enforce a no-fly zone, you have to have either your airplanes over there or somebody on the ground with enough firepower and shoot down the Russian planes. If you cannot do that, what is the use of it? If you do it, this crazy man said, I will consider this direct attack to Mother Russia. And if you do it, my nuclear deterrence is ready, he said. He clearly said, he uttered those deterrence words from his mouth. And Murat Bey and Mark, my good friends, even as small as atomic bomb can kill thousands of innocent people. And we want to stop this war, and therefore that is why we need to pay attention to the feelings of this aggressor. Aggressor or not, he has the gun, and he is holding the guy in his clasp, and he put the gun to his head, and we have to do something. You cannot say, hey, you aggressor, go ahead, get out of here. He's not. There's an alternative to this, alternative to the diplomacy. It is the Third World War. Mr. Biden said this almost 2 weeks ago. Either this or that, he said. And that is very dangerous thing to do. Now, are Europeans ready for the Third World War? Are we ready to have these nuclear bombs flying over Europe, over Turkey, over Middle East? Are we? I don't think so. I don't think so. We have to be realistic and be ready for sacrifices and tell this guy, okay, Ukraine is yours, and Georgia is also yours. Go your home and take your soldiers with you, and then we will discuss it later. And it is a very dangerous situation.
Okay,
we can't do that.
We're running out of time, sadly, because we connected late. But one last thing, Mark, let me ask you: why do you think Zelensky won't utter those beautiful words and say, "I'm not going to be a NATO member"? One sentence could end this war. Why isn't he doing it?
Well, I can't speak for him, but I think that the point about the no-fly zone, I mean, it's true that could potentially be cataclysmic, but the situation is cataclysmic because I think that even if he said, I won't be a NATO member, then that wouldn't be sufficient for Putin because he'd want to put in a puppet government. And then he'd want to go against NATO itself. He was very, very clear, Putin, that he wants a rollback to the earlier period, back to the 90s, 80s, whenever. He wants all the countries that join NATO to be taken out of NATO and no one else be allowed to join NATO. And that is just not an option, because NATO, by the way, is not an aggressive force. It's a defensive force. And what Putin has proved to the world is that NATO's raison d'etre is valid in the sense that to defend itself against Russia is why it was created. And I want to say something about diplomacy. There was a diplomacy in World War II. Neville Chamberlain went to meet with Adolf Hitler, and he said there would be peace in our time. He said those words. But there was no peace. Why was that? Because Germany went and invaded countries and murdered their civilians. So that's the option. The other option in stopping Hitler was going and getting the world together to fight the aggressor. I don't know what to say. The nuclear part, you're right, is very, very problematic because, look, the whole balance of power, I'll call it the balance of terror, between nuclear powers is based on rational behavior, that no one's going to attack the other party because they know they'll get attacked, and that's called mutual assured destruction. Then what do we do with an actor, not an actor not like Zelensky, but I'm saying by a political actor like Putin, who seems not to be making rational decisions, who is gearing up his nuclear forces to a higher level? The United States didn't do anything on that. That was very good. That is something that we have to step back and understand that we're at a real existential moment right here. So yeah, Zelensky could say, I don't want to be part. By the way, Ukraine couldn't be part of NATO anyway. Why? Because NATO does not admit members that have territorial disputes. So it's not about Ukraine being in NATO. It's about validating invasion of Crimea and Georgia and the Donbass and all of that. And then the world, if the world validates that, then the next step is Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, you name it. And that is not going to happen ever. And the United States with Europe isn't going to permit it. And maybe at some point, they're going to do the gas and oil, boycott. Maybe it's going to hurt at the gas prices, but something has to be done.
Have you seen the gas prices? They're like 30% higher than they were before the war. I mean, the guy's making a fortune on this. It was at $80. It's $115 now a barrel. I mean, it's crazy, the prices.
If you can get the money.
Well, he can get it from SWIFT because it's still open. All right, guys. All right.
Anyway, there was more on that, but I agree with you.
Okay, it's crazy. So obviously, gentlemen, it's been great talking to both of you. I really appreciate you taking the time, especially on this Sunday, to talk to me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope we can talk again soon, hopefully maybe on about a different topic. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.